All right, you guys, how's everyone doing? Welcome to day 2 of 30 days to amaze. Only 28 more days left. Can you see the end yet? Hey, hopefully it's all syncing now. So yesterday there was a little bit of a glitch. Anyway, this is new technology for me, but I think everything is working good now. So I've got my laptop down here so I can see comments that are coming in. I've got my production studio over here to my right where I'm pressing all sorts of buttons, like things like my logo disappearing and having my name pop up in case you forget my name. So let me know if that's all coming in good and stuff. So Karen's here, Nancy's here. Yes, we had a late addition this morning as well too. So we're now up to 19 people. So I'm going to be making that charity water donation for us later today. And yeah, I'll have some exciting news to share with you on that. So again, thank you again for being a part of 30 Days to Amaze. I'm always so inspired by people that are making investments into their health journey. But there's that other side benefit of knowing that we're helping people across the globe with this clean water projects that we're a part of. And so we're not only optimizing our own selves, with us specifically with our diet and our exercise and our habits, but also we're helping to contribute to other people just getting some basic necessities in the form of just water, something that you and I just take so much for granted. And it's only when you're without things like water, or maybe in us, if we lose power for a day, it's like, oh, I really didn't understand how much I took power for granted. Or things like taken for granted, like going to a movie theater or a concert or a restaurant or going to a store without 3 masks on, things like that. So yeah, we take those things for granted, but some people and a lot of people in the world don't have access to the things that we drink and bathe in and defecate in. And so it's pretty cool that we get to be a part of something like that. So again, thanks for being a part of something like that. All right, Sarah's here. Cool. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, I had a bunch of comments coming in yesterday, but I wasn't able to view them, and so I'm seeing if what I'm doing now will help. All right, I think I should be able to view them now. All right. Well, let's get going. I want to talk a little bit about the email that went out today, and I'm pretty excited about this topic because it comes up a lot. I think when we start learning, like for instance, we start learning about what we learned about on day 1, just the 3 things to avoid at all costs. And hopefully you spent all of yesterday getting rid of those things. If those things were in your kitchen or your pantry, your cupboard, you spent some time reading the back of the labels and said, hey, does this have added sugar in it? Does this have grains in it? Does this have inflammatory oils like vegetable oil, soybean oil, canola oil, peanut oil, cottonseed oil, grapeseed oil, all those cruddy, crappy oils? So all those things are the foods that inflame your body. For some of us, it'll make you fat. For other people, it just causes all sorts of chronic disease. And so this is the place to start for all of that, to get rid of these foods and keep them out of arm's distance, because willpower only lasts so long. These foods are designed, and when I say foods, again, I'm using the air quotes here. Well, these foods are designed to be hyper palatable, which means that they're supposed to taste amazing, and they're supposed to be, well, as far as our government's concerned and the food manufacturer is concerned, very easily produced and very cheaply produced, and that's why they can stay on shelves forever and ever and ever. And that might be an indication of why it might not be such a good thing to have inside of our bodies. But hey, you spent all day yesterday getting rid of those things, saying, hey, I don't want that stuff in my life. These are the things that are causing all of the symptoms that I don't want to have in my life in terms of my health journey. And but where does that leave you, right? I got to replace that with something, and that's what today is all about. So a little bit later on, I'm going to put in our Facebook group our approved foods list, the Optimized Life approved foods list, and you're going to love the foods on there because these are real foods. There's no air quotes there. These are foods that are going to not inflame you, that are going to promote all the things that you're wanting in life. More energy, less brain fog, less inflammation, less insulin storage that makes us store extra body fat, unneeded body fat, excess body fat, the things that you don't want for health and vitality, and consequently joy and happiness in your life. That's why this stuff is so important. This is so much more important than just looking sexy in the mirror, or trying to, work on our, our bikinis, or, our Muscle and Fitness magazine if you're a guy, or whatever it might be. A lot of times people like, hey, I got a graduation coming up, or a wedding coming up, or I've got, some life event, so I've got to like lose 20 pounds and look really good. I mean, this goes way beyond that. So when you start to optimize your diet and your lifestyle and your exercise, and all these things start working for you, then you're like, oh, this is a lot more than losing body fat for some kind of aesthetic reason, or I'm not trying to lose inflammation in my body for some skin deep kind of reason. It just goes so much deeper than that. And hopefully you've had a little bit of taste of that and experienced that. And if not, you are in the right place for this coming month. All right, so today was all about changing the language around food, the language. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Let's say you go to a doctor's office and you get some kind of checkup, and you spend the average amount of a doctor's appointment, which is, I think, is about 12 minutes in this country. It might even be down closer to 8. I've seen anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes is pretty much the standard time you're going to see your doctor. And so you only have about enough time to describe the symptoms that you're experiencing. And usually what happens is that the doctor recommends, hey, there's this drug you should try and this prescription you should try. And that's kind of the extent of it. And the doctor, no fault of their own, they don't have enough time, and they are swamped with patients. They don't have enough time to spend an hour with you talking about and diagnosing and trying to figure out what is the root cause of your issue. But again, most of the time, there's the reminder going at the office, just like, hey, you really need to start eating right, and you really need to start staying away from bad foods, and you really need to start exercising, and you're kind of left with that, like, what do I do with that? And so changing the food language, as far as food's concerned, just changing the language from things like good foods and bad foods, instead of saying that, we're going to learn another word that's going to be much helpfuler, a lot more helpful. And so we're changing the language around food. We're not calling foods good or bad, because there's no such thing. If you think about the morals of food, they don't have any, right? They're inanimate objects. Well, I mean, I guess they're kind of alive. They got some enzymes and things like that make them, I guess, technically alive. But they don't have a moral code, right? So whether you're eating an Oreo or an apple, one of them is not good, one of them is not bad. And consequently, you're not a bad person if you eat an Oreo, and you're not a good person if you eat an apple instead. And so a lot of diet culture has ascribed our behaviors from the kind of foods that we eat to the morality that we have as human beings. And so we're going to ditch all of that. So we're never, ever, 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 ever going to call foods good or bad again, okay? And we're not going to even call foods healthy or unhealthy, okay? So we're going to get rid of all of that language. What food is healthy for you? What food is unhealthy? Is this bag of chips, are these healthy for you? Is this apple healthy for you? Is this Oreo unhealthy? We're going to get rid of all that. We're just going to change the language, and I think it's going to have a profound impact on the way that you view food, and consequently how you view yourself when you consume said foods. All right? So the words we're going to use primarily, I've got a couple more for you later, but the words we're primarily going to use are foods that are supportive and foods that are unsupportive. Foods that are supportive and foods that are unsupportive. And what I mean by that is that foods that support you. They support you and your goals, your vitality. Your unsupportive foods do the opposite of that, right? They take away from your vitality. They add on fat. They add on inflammation. So foods that do the things that you want to do in your life for a great result are supportive foods, and the things that take away from that are unsupportive. And yesterday we talked about only 3 foods, and these are foods, right? Foods that are unsupportive. There's only 3 of them. It's those cruddy oils that are made in a factory that are not in nature anywhere, that man has to make them man-made. And excess sugar. Now again, I got to be careful with that, because there's sugar in a lot of things, like fruit, for instance. We'll talk about that later as well, what a sensible amount of fruit to have is. But added sugar. So added sugar are things like cookies and cakes and donuts and all that kind of stuff. Those are examples of unsupportive foods. And the last one was, oh yeah, grains. Grains are unsupportive, all right? They don't support health. They give you inflammation. They wreck your body with anti-nutrients. They're just a poor source of fuel, which we'll be talking about in a couple of days as well. Kind of prioritizing different types of fuel, because that's really what food is if you think about it. It's not just something you put down your gob. I mean, that's what I used to think food was, just something I ate. Had really nothing to do with anything else. And I made all my decisions on, hey, does this food taste good or not? And if I like it, then I'll eat it. And if I don't, I won't, kind of thing. And that's kind of the amount, the extent of where it went. But when you find out that foods are supportive or unsupportive, then you begin to make all sorts of different educated decisions when it comes to that. When you look at food as like on the spectrum, because there are some that are totally unsupportive, and those are the big three, right? What we talked about yesterday. I would say those are, in every case, unsupportive foods. But there might be some other gray area. There might be some other nuance, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that's kind of in the middle. And okay, I got one. Maybe potatoes. Are potatoes supportive or unsupportive? Right? We'll talk about that at the very end because that question came up yesterday. But so you actually can make better decisions rather than just labeling it's unhealthy to have potatoes or it's good to have potatoes. If you just begin to look on it on the spectrum of supportive versus unsupportive, you can find out kind of where it falls on the perspective on that spectrum and make better decisions that are going to support you and your health goals. So I hope that makes some sense. All right. I think it's important that when we talk about unsupportive foods that we reframe. Okay, and so what we're going to do is I just developed this last month, and a couple of you guys have seen this before, but I'm going to give you the Optimized Life Manifesto. Okay, the meal manifesto. So let me share this little screen with you. Let's see if this works like so. Nope. Let's try this. Give me 1 second. All right, not working. Why is it not working? This is going to be worth it. Oh, I think I've got it. Maybe. Ooh, I'm getting closer. Thanks for being patient with me. All right, here we go. Boom. Okay, so this is the TOL, the Optimized Life Meal Manifesto. So when we talk about changing the food language, this is, and I'm going to post this in our group as well too, but this is what we want to have are the words that we describe our food, our meals, okay? So the first thing is this little phrase here. I choose to eat foods that are. So we'll talk about what those words are in a second. But that word choose, I want to just talk about for a quick second, is because that is a very empowering word. Okay, we're not little boys and girls here. We're not little kids. Most of us, actually I think all of us, we are independent. We live on our own. We have income at our disposal. We're able to make grown-up decisions. No one's forcing you to eat Chips Ahoy, or no one's forcing you to eat broccoli. It's like we all get to choose this. And I find that very empowering to find out that we have the capabilities, the resources to make decisions that are going to benefit us or that aren't going to support our health. And so we get to choose that, okay? So no one is making us do something. We might have all sorts of reasons why we can't overcome our temptations with food, or we succumb to our cravings all the time. But at the end of the day, we really are empowered, and we get to choose foods that are, and let's go through these words right here. The first one, and that's why, by the way, that's what I think a real food would look like. So these aren't foods that are in quotes. You see a lot of high protein, high kind of fat kind of content, all things that are made and grown in nature. None of these things are made in a lab or don't have to be made in some factory. So I choose to eat foods that are, first of all, satisfying. Okay, satisfying. There are no, diet culture. I mean, if you go to your doctor and your doctor says, hey, make sure you eat well, sometimes that usually means that, I guess I got to have things that are gross tasting. I got to eat or drink Slim Fast shakes if I want to lose weight, or I got to start eating rice cakes or things like that, things that are not very satisfying. So for me, the meal manifesto, foods that are supportive, they have to be satisfying. In other words, they have to taste awesome. So one of the rules I have is like, hey, if it doesn't taste good, spit it out. Really, you're not allowed in 30 Days to Amaze to eat any food that you think is gross. All right, so that's good, right? That's good news. I mean, you don't have to go and eat cauliflower if you don't like it. By the way, speaking of cauliflower, I realized this last year that I don't like it. I just don't like cauliflower. I was trying to like it for a while there. For the last couple of years, I was like, well, it's kind of a healthy product, and people are coming up with all sorts of ways to make cauliflower into like rice and mashed potatoes and ice cream. I kid you not. I think you can make ice cream out of cauliflower. But I just came to the realization one day, like, what? I don't like it. But guess what? I don't have to eat cauliflower. And if you don't have to eat cauliflower as well, or whatever you don't like. So food has to be satisfying. Okay, that's really our motivation or one of our motivations is to eat awesome food. Is like, it's got to taste amazing. Okay, so that's the first thing. All right, the second thing is I choose to eat foods that are fulfilling. This is a little bit like satisfying, but a little bit different. Fulfilling means that when you eat this food, it's going to sustain you and carry you. It's going to satiate you. It's going to feel good in your body. And when you eat these kinds of foods, you are going to feel better. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel energized. I mean, there are some foods that we eat and we have to take a nap immediately afterwards, right? The foods that are fulfilling, you don't have to do that. Most of us, when we eat eggs and bacon, we don't have to take a big nap like right after consuming it. Most of us, after going to IHOP and eating a big stack of flapjacks and pancakes and syrup and all that kind of stuff, it's like nap time coming very, very soon. And so meals and foods that are fulfilling will carry you on a lot longer than 2 hours or 3 hours. They can carry you multiple hours, like days long if you have to. So fulfilling. All right, the next word, supportive. We want these, again, the word supportive again. We want these foods to support all of our human bodily functions. It's going to help us reduce our amount of body fat percentage. It's going to stave off inflammation, which is the root cause of pretty much every chronic disease that's out there. It's going to help us just be the amazing human machines that nature/God intended us to be. And so these are the foods that will support all of the things that you want and need to be. All right, next one, nutrient dense. I'm going to get rid of my picture there for a second. How do I do that? Nutrient dense. So these are foods that have lots of nutrients, lots of them. By the way, I used to think nutrients I didn't really know what they were. So I'll tell you real quickly. There's only three. There's three nutrients. There's fats, there's proteins, and carbohydrates. I used to, back in the days where I was juicing a lot. We'll have a whole day on beverages, and so I'll expand more on that. But I was in like a juice craze for a while, so I was drinking a lot of carrot juice. And I remember going to the store, and I would get a big hunk of parsley for this like juice that I was making. It tasted so awful. But I remember just like being kind of evangelistic about it. I would tell the cashier, hey, do you know that parsley is the most nutrient-dense thing on the planet? And maybe I read that somewhere or something like that, but I had no idea what I was talking about. It just sounded good, and it was so awful when I had parsley juice that I thought I was doing my body just like this big favor. But if you do a nutrient profile, a nutrient would be fats and proteins and carbohydrates. If I match, for instance, some bacon up against parsley, the bacon's going to win every single time. Or some eggs against spinach, the eggs are going to win every single time. The profile of fats and proteins and carbohydrates they're just more dense. They're going to have a lot more density in those kinds of foods, and subsequently they're going to carry you on and fulfill you and satiate you longer than any parsley juice ever will. So does that make sense? All right, and then the last one, honoring. I choose to eat foods that are honoring. They're honoring to myself. So if I eat these foods that are all these things that are nutrient dense, supportive, fulfilling, satisfying, they are in essence, they are honoring to me. Okay, they are honoring to the kind of person that I want to become. And we all want to do that. We all want to be honoring to ourselves, don't we? We don't want to be dishonoring to ourselves, because our lives are precious, and they mean a lot to our own lives, but they mean a lot to the other people that we long to serve and love. And this is the way to do it. This isn't the only way to do it, but this is why this stuff is so important, because when you eat foods on a continual basis that are unsupportive, you are robbing not only yourself of life and vitality and probably longevity, but you're robbing the people that you long to love and serve. It could be your own family, it could be your friends, maybe it's grandchildren that you long to pick up. And so this is the way to get at that. I believe this is again, it's hard to, or almost impossible. I'll just say it is impossible to pour from an empty cup. So if you're empty, you got nothing to give. But if you are full, not just with food, but if you're full of life, and if you have an abundant life, and this is the source of your energy, just really amazing food for 80% of getting you towards your health goals and health journey, then this is a great way to tackle that. So enough about that. All right. The SOL meal manifesto. This is a little different than the TOL meal manifesto. This is the, do y'all know what SOL means? In Virginia, sometimes it means standards of learning, but it might mean out of luck, and I'll let you figure out what the S stands for. But hey, I choose to eat food like substances that are. So we have that choice again. So that goes back to our original word, right? We have the choice to choose these kinds of food-like substances. And maybe you look at that and you're like, oh, just drooling at the screen right now. You see the In-N-Out burgers and the fries and the sodas and the candy bars and the ice cream cones and the cookies and the pizzas, and I could just go on and on with that. And those are food-like substances that do these things. Okay, so I choose to eat food like substances that are satisfying. I'm not going to lie to you. These foods are satisfying. They provide the same way that the supportive food list provides you with things that are satisfying. This is similar to that, is that they are satisfying. Let's not kid ourselves that eating pizza or burgers with a big old white bun or French fries soaked in canola oil and soybean oil and all that kind of stuff, and ice cream cones that are made with soybean oil, and cookies that are made with vegetable oil. I mean, all that stuff, it's satisfying. It tastes awesome. So it gives you that 10 seconds of mouth pleasure while it's in your mouth and while it's going down your gullet. Let's just say as long as the meal lasts. So if the meal takes you 15 minutes to eat, I'd say it's about 15 minutes of mouth pleasure. So it's satisfying. Those foods are satisfying. However, that's where the similarities end, because they are the opposite of what the TOL manifesto is. Eating food like substances are unfulfilling, so they're not going to carry you and sustain you for very long, right? They're not going to give you the energy and vitality for more than 2 hours at the most. This is why you can have a stack of pancakes at IHOP at 8 in the morning, and by 10:30 you're looking for a mid-morning snack. All right, you've had like 3,000 calories of a breakfast that's unfulfilling, and that's why you might need to have more food before lunchtime. And this is why this is why you have the energy crash in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, and this is why you're running to the vending machine at work if your work is still open in an office. And this is why we're raiding the refrigerator late at night, because these foods are so unfulfilling. They're full of calories, they're caloric dense, but they are so unfulfilling. And then the last three words, they are unsupportive, so they don't support the kind of health goals that we're after. They are nutrient poor, so not a whole lot of good fats and good proteins and supportive carbohydrates. And ultimately, they're dishonoring to our bodies. They are dishonoring to them. So I hope you kind of saw that that's kind of the list. Those are the choices that we have. We can have foods that are supportive or unsupportive. And I think that we can categorically say, hey, if the foods are in the big three, the unholy trinity of food-like substances, those are on the unsupportive side. And pretty much everything else is on the supportive side. And that's another cool thing, is that we have a lot of freedom and a lot of variety to be able to choose foods like the list I'm going to give you. That's not an extensive list, but it's a way that you're going to get started. You're going to find all these foods on there that you absolutely love. If there's anything on this foods list that you don't want to have, guess what? You don't have to have it, okay? Only if these foods provide you great pleasure, but they will also provide you not only with satisfying mouth pleasure if you happen to like those foods, but they're going to be all of the things that the TOL meal manifesto has, that they are fulfilling. They're going to sustain you for a long amount of time, and they're going to help you stave off disease. They're going to help you live for a long time. They're going to help you live not only for a long time, but with a lot of energy and vitality, and you're able to use that energy to pour into other people, including yourself. So hope that makes a lot of sense. So let me go through. Before I do that, let me just see if there's anything else I want to cover from today's email. Where did that email go? Thought I had it handy. As I've been talking, pop some questions into either our YouTube channel comments if you're watching on there, or in our little Facebook group. Any questions, any comments, concerns? There's a couple that were from yesterday that I'll go over here in a second. Let's see, changing food language. All right. All right, I think that's it from the email. Let me see if there's anything else I wrote down as I was stewing on this stuff. So if yesterday you were spending all day getting rid of stuff, and by the way, if you haven't done that yet, you're going to have to go back to the beginning. I mean, that's why I said yesterday was the most crucial day, and if we don't master that first day and we get a gold medal, 100% A++++ in our AP course of getting rid of those unsupportive foods that we keep at arm's reach, then it's really no use going on to anything else. And so sorry if that's hard to hear. And you might say, oh, but I just went to the store, I just bought cookies, and I just bought, some grape soda and some Gatorades and things like that. Well, a couple things I would say. If you throw them away, you're not really throwing away food. So that's good, right? It might have cost you a pretty penny, but you don't need that stuff. You don't need to justify spending money on that by I guess I got to just use it up first before I get serious about this stuff. So I would say just throw it in the trash, because you're not really throwing away food. You're just throwing away food-like things. So there's that. But you know what else you can do if you want to make yourself feel good? Just put it in a bag and go deliver it to a food pantry or a food shelter, because there are other people in this country and in our communities that just need calories. They need that a lot more than they need to optimize their diet and their exercise and their lifestyle in a month-long challenge. They have got bigger needs. And so, just provide them with something like that. So get that food out of your reach. And hopefully you spend a lot of time going through all the things in your pantry and in your cupboard and examining the back of the labels. That's one of the things I loved about yesterday. And that little mini live video that I did from the Aldi's shopping store was that I think Josh said, hey, there's a lot of like mayonnaise, for instance, that says avocado oil, made with avocado oil on the front. So you'd be like, yeah, this is made with avocado oil. But then if you take the time to turn over and read the ingredients, which most people do, and you can't blame them for not, because who wants to do that? But you turn it over and it says, yeah, there's some avocado oil in there, but pretty much the main ingredient is soybean oil. So remember, food manufacturers know how important it is to have the front of their labels, especially as so many people are starting to care more about their health. And these days, it's like they want to have very attractive labels on the front that are going to make you think that you're doing something really good for your body. Now, if it says made with avocado oil on the front and you turn it over on the back and avocado oil is like the only oil on there, then that's awesome. But let's be super hyper vigilant, knowing that there are landmines everywhere coming to get you. And if you're not careful, it's going to sneak its way in. So we need to really examine every single label that we have within arm's reach. And when we're at the store, it's like we just don't get a free pass. And by the way, you're going to get really good at this. That's the good news, is that you're not going to have to read labels forever. After a while of doing it, maybe a couple months, you're just going to know, or you're going to highly suspect. If I go down the salad dressing aisle, that everything in the salad dressing aisle, except for maybe that one that I know of, isn't going to be food that is supportive for me. That's going to contain highly inflammatory toxins in our life, in our food. It's going to cause me harm. And so you're going to get really, really good at that. And after a while, you won't even have to do that anymore. And another good news, you'll be able to educate people in the store if you'd like. Sometimes I see people reading a label. I'm like, hey, would you like any help with that? I've never heard anyone say, yes, tell me more. But sometimes I say, hey, did you know I'm an expert label reader and I would love to help you with that? Or if I see someone in the dressing aisle, mulling over that, I'll like, hey, have you tried this Primal Kitchen dressing? It's made with avocado oil. I do a little plug for it, and I don't get any royalties from that, but it's just a way for me to spread what I've learned to people. So you can do that as well too. You don't have to be a certified health coach like myself. Just say, hey, guess what? I've learned that if you're in the butter aisle and someone's trying to figure out if they should have Smart Balance or some Kerrygold butter, man, say, hey, grab this Kerrygold butter. I promise you it's going to do your body a lot more favors than that stupid Smart Balance. So when you see the food list today, again, you're going to love these foods. And again, you don't have to get everything on the list. Just cross up the things that you don't like. And the other things that you like, you want to stock your pantries and your fridges and your cupboards with those things. If you got rid of all that stuff, if you had a big trash bag full of these foods and you got rid of them yesterday, and if you didn't do that, you're going to do that today, right? But then you're like, well, what am I going to eat now? This list will help you get started. So if there's something that's not on the list, again, it's not an exhaustive list, just pop that into our Facebook, or email me or message me on Facebook or whatever it might be. Just, hey, ask if this should be on the list, and we can add those things to the list if you would like. All right, one of the questions came in yesterday, and I love this question, and I get this all the time. Are potatoes good or bad? So are potatoes good or bad? So I had to kind of, give this person a long answer, which I'm sure they just wanted a real quick answer, like yes or no. But are potatoes good or bad? So I said, hey, well, let's change the food language of that. Are potatoes supportive or unsupportive? So I would say, are they on the big three list? Are they full of added sugars? Nope. Are they a grain? Nope. Are they full of inflammatory factory oils? Nope. So I would say they are closer. They are not totally 100% unsupportive. And so now we have to kind of look at the nutrient profile of that. We haven't really got that far yet, but for the short run, yeah, they're supportive. They're grown by God, right? And so now it might not be a great practice to eat potatoes all day long at every meal. I know a couple of you love some potatoes, and guess what? I do too. I just bought a 5-pound bag of potatoes yesterday, but that's going to probably last me more than a month, my family more than a month. Just as a rule of thumb, I have potatoes maybe once, twice a week at most, because I just kind of know that's it's just not a high nutrient dense kind of food, but that doesn't make it unsupportive. It's actually a very supportive food when combined with something else. It's just not something I'm going to revolve my whole diet around. Do you see what I'm getting at here? There's a lot of nuance when it comes to figuring out if foods are unsupportive or supportive. And then when you find out they're supportive, how supportive do you want them to be? So again, if I put a potato next to a ribeye steak, which one's going to be more supportive? Probably the ribeye. And I'm going to probably have the ribeye a lot more than I'm going to just eat like a potato dinner. But maybe the two of them together would be like an extra supportive one. So anyway, a lot of latitude with that and a lot of nuance with that. So I hope that makes sense. All right, so I'm going through the Facebook comments here, and then I'll head on over to YouTube and see if there's anything else. So Karen says, it's depressing. I wonder what you were talking about there. Could be all the stuff that we were talking about. There's a lot of depressing news with that. But in a way, I'm not sure what you were referring to, but I get depressed a lot when I see just our culture kind of heading, we call this the standard American diet, the SAD diet. I see someone in a store who's got really bruised limbs, legs and arms, and that's just like a sign of diabetic issues and problems and symptoms. And I'm stereotyping here, but this happens a lot. I see someone with maybe even a limb that's been sawed off because of diabetes, and I'm seeing this person fill up their cart full of sodas and crackers and waffles and cookies and all these kinds of things. And there's a lot of people that think that meat causes cancer and it causes fat gain, and we'll talk about that later on as well too. But rarely, very rarely, will I see a person in that kind of condition or in a wheelchair or one of those motorized carts in the supermarket, and they're just loading up their cart full of these kinds of foods that are supportive. They're not loading up their cart full of eggs and bacon and vegetables and steaks. That's pretty rare where that happens. Actually, I've never seen it. So that's what's depressing to me. It's like it's hard for me just to kind of like look away. And again, it's just I'm not judging them at all because I've been there, but just knowing what I know now, and I guess that's the depressing part about it. But it's also the fun part about it too, is that I get to be on here with 19 of you guys who are saying, hey, I want to learn about this stuff and I want to make further strides in my health journey. I don't want to end up in a motorized wheelchair at the supermarket. I want to learn what it means to support my family with these kinds of foods that are satisfying and nutrient dense and supportive foods as well. Sarah said, when I cleaned out my pantry, I got rid of most of my food. Ha ha. Yeah, some of the people that did this before that I've worked with, they fill up hefty, big black bags full of their stuff, and they cleared like everything out, which showed you like, oh my gosh, I was eating the standard American diet for like the biggest percentage of my diet. What was left was like, a hunk of lettuce in the refrigerator. So it's a pretty cool visual. By the way, if you ever do this, I love it when people put this on social media. So you can put that in our group, but when people post pictures on their social media profiles, like, hey, I did a pantry purge today. I'm learning that these foods are wrecking my health, and I'm turning over a new leaf for 2021. I think that's really, really inspiring because there's a lot of other people that probably need to do that as well. And I think you can be a catalyst for change and inspiration in that area. So I'm glad to see that Sarah did that. Josh said, those food-like substances left me depressed, having anxiety, and having memory issues. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. I didn't know that about you, Josh. And by the way, Josh, I'm going to interview him a little bit later on. And so you're going to get to meet him, and we'll probably get to hear a little bit of that story. Maybe that's something I'll ask him about too. But man, the connection between mental, I'll say issues, but let's just focus on depression. I believe that starting with food and getting rid of inflammatory foods, because when you think about inflammation, sometimes we think, by the way, we haven't really talked about what that is yet. Let me just vamp on that just for a quick second. If you don't know what inflammation is, well, you do. Okay, inflammation is the body's acute response, or should be the body's acute response to help with injury. So if you've ever twisted your ankle before, your ankle swells up and it doesn't really move. It kind of forms a cast around that. So you got just tons of like blood rushing there and white blood cells to heal the damage that you caused. And so that's an example of an acute injury and the inflammation that results from that. Another example is if you ever get a mosquito bite. Okay, so a mosquito bites you, and who doesn't love a good mosquito bite? They're so much fun to scratch. But you get a little bump there and it starts to itch. And so that's the body's way of just kind of protecting that area or protecting the toxins that the mosquito or the bee injected into your body. And so that's just to help you, to keep you alive. So inflammation is the body's process to help keep you alive and to stave off more bad things that can happen to you. The problem is when inflammation becomes chronic. And this is where if you have any kind of joint pain, for instance, if your knees are always sore, it might just not be because you're carrying a bunch of weight. It might be because you just have inflammation running rampant through your body. So your cells are inflamed, your blood vessels are inflamed. And then going back to depression, too much sugar and maybe too much grains and too much food-like substances in your life, if this makes up your diet, it can inflame your brain. Okay, so your brain is being inflamed, and no wonder it causes all sorts of mental issues and depression and anxiety and elevated stress. Just the fact that when we have too much sugar, it just stresses our adrenal glands, and you're going to have a lot more stress in your life. It might not just because the kids are stressing you out or you're in traffic. It might just because the junk in your diet is causing your body just to feel the symptom of stress and anxiety. Does that make sense? And so, there's definitely a link to that. And just brain fog, memory issues. Man, I've never had a whole lot of brain fog, but before I kind of started living healthy, one day I forgot my PIN number. This is a PIN number I had, I think, for 12 years, 4 digits on my credit card. And one day I got to the machine at the supermarket. I couldn't remember it. I'm like, well, it'll come back to me the next day, and it didn't. And the next day after that, it just wiped away from my memory. And that just doesn't... How can that happen? Just 4 little numbers. Well, I think it was because my brain was probably so inflamed with eating pizza and drinking soda and eating sandwiches all day long. That's my theory, at least, why I forgot my PIN number. So I've been able to keep my PIN number in my brain for the last 3 years now. I'm still going strong. So, Josh has another sneaky one: sugar in tomato paste. Why? Yeah, I don't know why we need sugar. Well, I do know why sugar's in tomato paste and in tomato sauce, and I do know why sugar is in salad dressings, because there's that addictive property to it, right? We don't need it for taste reasons. But by the way, if you've never seen the documentary called That Sugar Film, it's probably my favorite of all the health documentaries. It's kind of like that documentary that came out a while ago called Super Size Me. But long story short, there's this guy in New Zealand who said, you know what, I'm going to eat the standard American diet for 2 months and see what happens. It's called That Sugar Film because he eats not just a bunch of lollipops and Jolly Ranchers and candies and things like that. He just pretty much eats the standard American diet, and just you watch the dramatic effect that sugar has on his body and mind, and it's pretty scary stuff. So it's called That Sugar Film. It's very, very entertaining. It's definitely something that you could watch by yourself or with the whole family. It's an amazing medium to communicate some of these truths. But one thing I'll never forget in there is that he talked about what food manufacturers will have. It's called a bliss point. And so what they'll do is, when, again, we talked about this yesterday, when you take the fat out of food, it makes most foods just taste horrible. And so food manufacturers will add sugar in to get people to a bliss point. So they'll have all these focus groups, right? And they're eating, let's just say, salad dressing, right? And so they start putting in no sugar salad dressing, but no one wants that because it tastes terrible. So they start adding sugar in, and they eat more salad dressing and more salad. But then they get to a point where it's like a bliss point, where if they add more sugar in than they've already added, they don't eat any more salad dressing. So that's like, hey, we've added the maximum amount of sugar to this low-fat yogurt or this low-fat cottage cheese or whatever it might be, or this low-fat milk, and they will not consume anymore. So that's the bliss point as far as food manufacturers are concerned. So that's why it's added to so many products that aren't really sweet, just like normal products. So if you ever see added sugar in something that, like salad dressing or tomato paste or tomato sauce, or so many examples of this, just know it's not there to, just taste differently in your mouth. It's there to basically keep you eating more and more and more of it. We all know how addictive the properties of sugar can be, and again, how sneaky it is. Here's another sneaky way about sugar, is that, Josh, this probably doesn't apply to you because he's from Canada and they use the metric system like civilized people. Well, us in America, we don't know what a gram is. So if you go to Starbucks and you get a venti iced mochaccino with some whipped cream on top or something like that, and maybe you put that into MyFitnessPal and you're like, hey, that has 78 grams of sugar. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, it doesn't to me. I don't know what a gram is. But then if you divide grams by 4, okay, so if you take the total grams and you divide it by 4, you're going to get a approximation of how many teaspoons of sugar in there. So last I checked, one of those large designer coffees from Starbucks has 22 teaspoons of sugar in there. All right, so for me, that makes sense. I know what 22 teaspoons is. That's, a cup of coffee or some water, and that's someone dumping 22 teaspoons in there. Now, if I was doing 22 teaspoons and dumping 22 teaspoons of sugar in my water, people would be like, man, you got a sugar addiction, man. You got a serious problem. But we'll go to a gas station and get a Mountain Dew, or go to our juice stops and get a big smoothie with 78 grams of sugar in it, or a big Slurpee at the gas station, all these kinds of things, and we think nothing of it. Go to Starbucks for our $10 designer drinks, and we think nothing of it. Mostly it's because it's just like in grams. So again, we got to be really careful about this stuff. We got to know that these are landmines everywhere, in our tomato paste, in our salad dressings, in our designer coffees. Just assume that there are landmines out there to get you. And it's not to make you paranoid and make you afraid of that stuff, but it's just to say, hey, I'm declaring war on this stuff. I'm not going to let anything go into my body that I don't know what the ingredients are, or I don't know the amount of certain ingredients that I'm trying to stay away from. If you get like a keto bar, for instance, I'm not a big fan of like these designer keto snacks and things like that. But if you get like a keto bar and you like read the back of it and hey, it's got like 2 grams of sugar. You divide that by 4 and like, oh, that's not like much teaspoons of sugar in there, and all the other ingredients look fine. I'd say go for it. So again, just be hyper vigilant when it comes to this stuff. Don't let anything go into your body that you don't know exactly what it is. Here's another tip. If you read the ingredients and there's a paragraph of ingredients and you can't pronounce them, I promise you, you don't need that in your body. Or if you want to be even more of a detective, Google one of those words. What is calcium carbonate or something like that? It might be something that's just totally fine, but hey, if you don't know what this chemical is, why first of all, why would you put Red Lake number 40? Google what that is. Do you want that? Carrageenan, maltodextrin. I mean, these are all big words that scientists come up with. I don't know what they are, but it might be a good idea to figure out what they are before you stick it in your mouth and put it down your gullet and have the potential to have more inflammation in your life. You better figure out what that stuff is. But by the way, when you look at the TOL approved foods list that I'm going to give you later on, every ingredient on that food list will be probably one thing. You don't have to go and get a head of broccoli and look for the ingredients on there, and wonder, hey, what's in this? Does this have any soybean oil in there? The ingredients are broccoli. Or if you get a bag of raw almonds, for instance, you look on the back and it says almonds. That's what you want, right? Just where there's not a whole laundry list, a whole paragraph of ingredients. The less are better. The more pronounceable ones are, as a rule of thumb, better. Again, if they are not in the top 3 unholy trinities of foods, you're probably in really, really good shape. So again, there's not hard and fast rules with this, but that's just a good guideline. Michael, what's your opinion on coffee? I recently cut it and I felt a lot better. Heard that a lot of coffee has a lot of pesticides on it, and that's what makes it unhealthy. So is coffee supportive or unsupportive? And again, it's not in the unsupportive big 3 unholy trinity. So coffee has a lot of antioxidants in it, and so I would say that's a very supportive food/beverage. So if you feel better without it, then stay off of it by all means. I feel better on it. I really do. With a caveat, because it's easy for me to drink more and more and more of it, but I've limited myself to like a small thermos every morning, and that's kind of it for me. And then every November, I ditch coffee for a month, and that's not a fun month. At least it isn't for the first couple of days, but then it's not so bad after that. Just to kind of do like a reset and to kind of get my body and my mind aligned and not being so dependent on caffeine, because that's kind of my drug of choice. But I will say this, if you're going to drink coffee, by all means get organic coffee. Absolutely, because every other coffee that's not organic is sprayed with a bunch of crap and pesticides, and yeah, you don't want that stuff in your life. So always get the best coffee you can. No stupid, I hope I'm not going to offend anyone here, but no Folgers or Maxwell House or Keurigs or any of that kind of stuff. Man, you get like a high quality organic bean. If you don't like your coffee black, your coffee sucks. Okay? A lot of people have to add a bunch of stuff to their coffee because their coffee tastes so terrible. So I promise you can begin to love black coffee if you get awesome, awesome coffee. So make that investment in yourself, be a coffee geek. You can grind beans and you can put them in all sorts of different brewing methods and things like that. I mean, what I do is I just grind beans and I throw them in a Mr. Coffee and I put the timer on, and 4 o'clock every morning it goes off, and I'm usually sucking that stuff down at like 5 a.m. every day. So it doesn't have to be complicated, but definitely make a high investment into organic coffee if you like the coffee. But if you do better without it, then by all means, stay off of it. You're not gonna, it's not like a superfood. That's another one of my pet peeves. People talk about superfoods. I don't think there is such thing as a superfood. So coffee is not a superfood. Chia seeds aren't superfoods. I mean, I think a ribeye is a superfood, but again, a superfood would just mean that it has a high macronutrient profile, and coffee is not one of those things. So it's just like any other beverage. It provides some liquid and some caffeine. So just make sure if you like it, you're making sure you get awesome, organic, awesome tasting, good quality coffee. So I hope that answers your question, Michael. That's a good question. It always comes up. People are always like, oh, please don't take away my coffee. Like when I'm doing the unholy trinity of foods, people are like, oh, please don't let coffee be on there. When they find out coffee's not on there, whew, big sigh of relief. That's happened a lot before. Please don't take away my coffee. Josh says about 4 grams is a teaspoon. Do you know what a teaspoon is, Josh? Do you guys use teaspoons up in Canada? Man, I wish we would get on the metric system. I'm serious. Life would be so much easier if you just divided everything by 10. You know, I don't know why we have that stupid system here in the States. It's ridiculous. All right, let me just go over to YouTube, and see if there's anything I need to... Oh, it looks like it's kind of quiet over there. 1 second. All right, so just because the live stream is ending doesn't mean your questions have to stop. So keep throwing them in our Facebook group, and I'll get to all of them. Message me directly on Messenger, or you can just email me, reply to the email that goes out every day, any kind of questions. And if they're ahead of time, I can always vamp on them in the next email. So, hey, I hope you guys are doing well. I'm thinking about you guys, sending good vibes your way during our second day, and just hoping you guys are making some of these amazing choices, these choices for your health and vitality. And I hope you're already getting good results. I mean, it's only day 2, but the thing is, if you do this for a little while, if you begin to ditch the things that are causing inflammation and harm to you, and you replace those with the foods that are going to be honoring to you as a person, to the people that you love, and that are fulfilling and satisfying. I mean, that's just the trifecta of awesome foods. You're going to begin to feel a lot better very, very quickly. It doesn't take that much time. And so I hope that you're continuing to on this journey and you're doing really well. And let me know how it's going. If you have any challenges, obstacles, we want to hear about them. And we'll see if we can be of assistance to you. So anyway, have a great rest of your day and look forward